Ethan Mercer had spent 20 years building a life around discipline, privacy, and things nobody in his coastal HOA seemed to understand. Boundaries, and his waterfront property sat at the edge of a high-end marina community where oversized homes, polished docks, and fake smiles made people believe money could buy access to anything. But Ethan's most prized possession wasn't his mansion, it was his 48-foot luxury yacht. The Sovereign Tide, docked behind a locked private slip, connected directly to his land, fully powered by an independent marine electrical system he personally maintained. That yacht represented years of sacrifice, contracts, sleepless work, and a life he earned without shortcuts. Unfortunately, HOA board member Karen Holloway saw it differently. To her, Ethan's yacht looked like the perfect centerpiece for a luxury networking party meant to impress investors, neighbors, and social elites. Without asking permission, she started treating his private dock like shared HOA property. At first, it looked like entitlement, and then it became trespassing. Then she planned a full-scale VIP event aboard his yacht. What Karen didn't know was simple. Ethan controlled every watt of electricity, every security relay, every marina feed, and every hidden system connected to that vessel. Bro, when someone mistakes ownership for inconvenience, karma usually arrives fast. Karen was about to host the most humiliating luxury party that Marina had ever seen. Ethan Mercer had never been the kind of man who fought loudly. That was probably why people underestimated him. In Seabriar Cove, a polished waterfront HOA community built around expensive docks, yacht slips, and curated perfection, most conflicts happened behind closed doors, through legal notices, passive-aggressive newsletters, and carefully worded violations disguised as community improvements. Ethan had lived there long enough to understand one simple truth. The people who smiled hardest often crossed boundaries fastest. His waterfront estate sat on the furthest southern edge of the marina, slightly separated from the rest of the neighborhood by a private retaining wall, gated dock access, and a deeded shoreline easement that had existed before the HOA was ever formed. While many residents rented slips through the shared marina authority, Ethan's dock was fully private. He had personally purchased, engineered, and upgraded it years earlier after a profitable marine logistics contract changed. His life attached to that dock was the Sovereign Tide, a 48-foot luxury yacht built for offshore travel, business retreats, and quiet isolation. It was sleek, polished, intimidating, and impossible to ignore. That was exactly why Karen Holloway became obsessed with it. Karen was one of those HOA board members who treated neighborhood authority like inherited royalty. She loved appearances, organized community prestige events, and had a reputation for bending rules whenever luxury optics were involved. If a landscaping rule annoyed her, it was ignored. If a parking rule helped her guests, it became flexible. If someone challenged her, she redirected the issue into protecting community standards. Ethan had watched it happen for years. He usually stayed silent because most HOA politics felt like theater. Then Karen began drifting closer to his dock. 3. At first it looked harmless. She would bring visitors near the marina path and casually point toward Ethan's yacht as if it were a visual attraction. Wealthy guests touring nearby homes would slow down, admire the vessel, and she would stand there acting like the entire waterfront reflected HOA excellence. Ethan noticed this through exterior cameras he used mostly for marine security. It irritated him, but not enough to react. And then boundaries started shifting. Karen began scheduling decorative marina cleanups that suspiciously pushed volunteers closer to Ethan's private dock line. A temporary event banners appeared near pathways adjacent to his retaining wall. Catering trucks once parked close enough to partially block his gated service lane. A photographer hired for some HOA social event captured wide marina shots that prominently included the Sovereign Tide. Ethan noticed a pattern. Karen loved the borrowed prestige. Bro, some people don't want to build status. They just stand near someone else's success and pretend it belongs to them. Still, Ethan remained patient. His life was built around precision. He managed contracts in marine infrastructure, did consulting work, and handled his yacht systems personally. Unlike many owners who outsourced everything, Ethan understood every electrical panel, dock feed, backup battery relay, shore power cutoff, navigation grid, refrigeration circuit, lighting network, and marine safety switch on his vessel. His yacht was connected to a dedicated independent power source routed through secured control cabinets on his land. HOA Marina Systems had no authority over it. That detail would matter later, for as spring turned into peak social season, Karen's activity increased. HOA newsletters began promoting a luxury harbor networking gala, an upscale evening designed to attract investors, real estate developers, and high-value buyers to strengthen the community's profile. Residents were encouraged to decorate visible waterfront areas. Marina views were advertised as a major attraction. Ethan ignored it. He had no interest in cocktail politics. Then one afternoon he noticed unfamiliar movement near his dock gate. A florist crew, two service workers, portable lighting equipment, temporary decorative crates. At first, Ethan assumed they were lost. Then camera footage showed something stranger. Karen herself walked the perimeter of his dock with a clipboard, pointing toward the yacht, gesturing across the upper deck, and measuring walkway spacing. That changed everything. Ethan immediately reviewed his property access logs. No approved request, no marina authorization, no maintenance order. Yeah, nothing. She had physically inspected his private dock as if planning an event. Instead of confronting her directly, Ethan documented everything. Photos, timestamps, camera footage, vehicle entries, service arrivals. It was a habit from years in contract disputes. Never react emotionally. When evidence can speak louder, 2 days later, another development pushed things further. An HOA email circulated to residents discussing exclusive harborside luxury entertainment access for select gala attendees. The message carefully avoided naming Ethan's yacht, but attached graphics showed a stylized vessel almost identical in scale and shape to the sovereign tide dock lantern layouts, matched his private slip orientation. That was not coincidence. Ethan printed the email. He stayed calm. He knew entitlement often escalated when ignored, so he waited. The next weekend delivered confirmation. 5. Karen hosted a pre-event inspection with decorators, event planners, and outside vendors. Security footage showed them entering marina walkways and stopping directly outside Ethan's locked dock access gate. She gestured confidently, indicating upper deck sections, side rails, stern platform spacing, and electrical fixture locations. Workers carried polished serving racks and portable audio gear. She was planning around his yacht, without permission, without contract, without contact, as if ownership was a technical inconvenience. Ethan finally checked with a marina subcontractor he trusted. Quietly, professionally, no accusations. The subcontractor mentioned hearing informal discussion that Karen had promised investors a private luxury yacht reception. To elevate the HOA's branding, some attendees reportedly believed a board member had arranged access to a waterfront owner partnership. That partnership didn't exist. Karen had effectively borrowed his property in conversations she had no right to make. That crossed beyond arrogance. It became operational risk. Luxury yachts are not decorative patios. They contain navigation systems, power grids, refrigeration units, marine controls, balance considerations, fuel regulations, and liability concerns. Unapproved guest loads could damage systems, violate insurance, or create legal exposure. Ethan understood this immediately. That was when his patience shifted into strategy. He still didn't explode publicly. He didn't post complaints. He didn't threaten anyone. He simply began preparing. First, he quietly checked every onboard system. Shore power, stable. Backup inverters, functional. Auxiliary deck lighting, normal. Refrigeration, active. Security relays, operational. Hydraulic controls, secure. Access locks, intact. Then he updated software locks and verified independent manual cutoffs. Then he disabled remote convenience overrides. Then he rechecked his landside marine electrical cabinet. 6. Every major luxury feature Karen would rely on. Ambient deck lighting, refrigeration support, galley power, climate circulation, entertainment systems, dock accent, illumination, exterior upper deck electrical outlets, ran through. Power Ethan controlled. Not the HOA, not the Marina Board, not Karen, only Ethan. That realization gave him unusual calm. Meanwhile, Karen became bolder. Decorative floral mock-ups appeared suspiciously near the marina. A catering company van made route checks. Temporary champagne staging sketches were visible on a worker's clipboard in camera zoom. A dock cleaning crew pressure washed adjacent pathways but left HOA slips untouched. She was prioritizing optics around his property. And then came the final insult. 3 days before the gala, a premium event company arrived. Workers unloaded velvet stanchions, polished serving carts, premium lighting rigs, and white canopy materials. Ethan watched remotely through security feeds while finishing paperwork downtown. And then he saw them, two workers carrying equipment toward his dock gate. Karen beside them, attempting direct access. The gate remained locked. They stopped. She inspected the lock, then pointed toward the yacht like frustration itself offended her. That footage made Ethan realize she fully expected entry. She had planned an event assuming his compliance or absence. Bro, entitlement gets dangerous when people stop asking because they think your property is basically theirs. Ethan returned home before sunset. He didn't contact Karen. He didn't argue. He simply reviewed the official gala announcement distributed that evening. This time it was explicit. Exclusive waterfront luxury reception with premium yacht ambiance. No name, no permission, no contract, but unmistakable. He sat in silence overlooking the marina while sunset reflected across the polished hull of the Sovereign Tide. Across neighboring slips, lights shimmered peacefully. Guests would arrive in tailored suits. Investors would expect elegance. Vendors would rely on timing. Karen would probably present herself like she had engineered another flawless HOA showcase. Everything depended on image. Everything depended on seamless luxury. Everything depended on power. And Ethan owned that switch. He walked to the secured marine cabinet near his private retaining wall and checked every breaker one final time. Stable? Accessible? Precise? No drama. No damage. Just waffle control over his own systems. That was malicious compliance at its cleanest. If Karen wanted to build a luxury party around something she didn't own, she was about to discover how fragile borrowed prestige really was. By the night before the gala, polished decorations lined the marina. Private guest lists were circulating. Catering staff were booked. Ballet staging had been arranged. Soft music tests echoed from nearby HOA docks. Karen believed she was hours away from her biggest social win. Ethan slept calmly because a real event hadn't started yet. It would begin the moment she tried turning his yacht into her floating trophy. The morning of the Harbor Networking Gala arrived with the kind of polished perfection Karen Holloway had probably imagined for months. Clear skies stretched over Seabriar Cove. The marina water reflected sunlight like polished glass. Luxury vehicles began appearing near the waterfront roads before noon. Catering vans rolled in with mechanical efficiency. Landscapers trimmed already perfect edges. Decorative lanterns lined pathways. Every detail screamed expensive control. And that was exactly why Ethan Mercer stayed calm. Chaos always hit harder when it interrupted perfection. 8. From the balcony of his waterfront estate, Ethan watched workers transform neighboring HOA dock space into a staged social corridor. White linen cocktail tables appeared. Temporary floral arches framed marina walkways. Soft ambient speakers were mounted near guest paths. Uniformed servers practiced movement routes. Security contractors checked guest entrances. None of that concerned him. His concern sat directly behind his house, the Sovereign Tide. His yacht looked immaculate beneath the afternoon sun. 48 feet of polished hull, tinted windows, gleaming rails, elevated upper deck, and luxury architecture sharp enough to dominate every camera angle. Even from a distance, it looked like money and exclusivity. Karen had clearly built the gala around that image. And she still had not asked permission. That detail mattered more with every passing hour. By late afternoon, Ethan reviewed camera feeds from inside his home office. He had 12 active angles covering dock entry points, shoreline walkways, power cabinets, marina boundaries, stern access, and upper side approach lines. He also reviewed electrical diagnostics. Everything was active. Deck lighting, stable. Galley refrigeration, stable. Auxiliary dock outlets, stable. Upper entertainment circuits, stable. Climate systems, stable. Accent marina lighting, stable. Backup marine inverter, stable. Every major luxury convenience Karen would rely on was still functioning. For now, Ethan had no intention of acting early. Timing was everything. Bro, revenge without timing just looks like anger. Revenge with timing looks like reality teaching someone a lesson. As sunset approached, the marina transformed. 9 guests began arriving in clusters. Investors, real estate developers, HOA donors, social elites, business owners, and high net worth visitors walked polished dock paths in tailored jackets and designer evening wear. Luxury sedans lined valet zones. Photographers moved carefully between scenic angles. HOA volunteers smiled like trained hospitality staff. Karen moved through all of it like she owned the coastline. Ethan watched her from camera feeds. She wore confidence like armor. She greeted vendors, directed servers, checked floral placements, repositioned decorative uplighting, corrected table symmetry, walked the central marina route with clipped authority. Every movement screamed, "Image management!" And then she shifted toward Ethan's dock. That was the beginning. 2 contracted workers followed her, carrying temporary serving trays and event accessories. A photographer trailed behind. Several premium guests were already being casually led toward exclusive marina access. Karen approached Ethan's private gate. Locked. She stopped, checked the handle. Still locked. A pause. And then something Ethan had quietly predicted. She turned toward one of the maintenance workers. The worker produced a marina utility access keyring. Karen had apparently assumed the marina maintenance key could override private dock access. It couldn't. And they tested. Nothing. Again, nothing. The private marine lot remained secure. That should have ended it. It didn't. Karen adjusted, and instead of boarding immediately, she used visual deception. She redirected guests to the adjacent HOA viewing dock that sat close enough to frame Ethan's yacht in photographs. Cocktail service shifted. Guests clustered near railings. Servers circulated champagne. Camera flashes began reflecting off the Sovereign Tide's polished hull. She was still using his yacht, and now as prestige scenery. Bro, that level of entitlement was wild. She couldn't enter the property, so she basically turned private ownership into event wallpaper. Ethan still waited. Night finally settled over Seabriar Cove, and that was when Karen escalated again. Portable uplighting turned on. A pathway lanterns glowed. Marina reflections doubled. Music drifted softly across the docks. Guests leaned into the illusion of exclusivity. Then temporary event contractors rolled in, something unexpected. A floating service bridge, not a major structure, just a stabilized portable marine platform used for equipment transfers between adjacent slips. Ethan's expression changed. Karen was not giving up. Workers carefully positioned the transfer platform between a neighboring HOA dock extension and the edge approach near Ethan's yacht stern line. Not direct boarding yet, but dangerously close. She intended to create access, not by breaking a lock and by bypassing it. That crossed every line. Ethan immediately documented timestamps, angles, worker IDs, and footage calmly. Then he saw premium serving trays being repositioned toward stern level visibility. Then decorative hanging lights were being aimed toward his yacht. Then portable audio equipment was being angled toward his deck. Then several elite guests were being subtly encouraged toward that side. Karen had created the impression of yacht party access without permission. It was no longer passive. It was operational trespass theater. That was the moment Ethan stood. He walked downstairs, crossed the interior hall, stepped outside into cool, salt-heavy air, past the retaining wall, reached the secured marine electrical cabinet, opened it. Inside sat the cleanly labeled systems he had installed himself years earlier: independent marine power relays, dock feed isolation switches, upper deck circuit breakers, climate power channels, auxiliary luxury systems, decorative dock illumination. 11. Shore power transfer controls. Every luxury layer feeding the sovereign tide. He touched none of them yet. Instead, he checked camera feeds from a mounted tablet. Karen was now guiding major investors toward the viewing edge. Servers had begun presenting premium drinks. Music had increased. Photographers were actively shooting marina glamour frames. And one event contractor had just extended decorative-powered cable routing toward his yacht-side visual line. And that was enough. Ethan shut down the first relay. Instantly, upper deck ambient lighting vanished. Soft white glow across the yacht died. Guests looked up. A subtle confusion. Karen paused. Photographers adjusted, but the event continued. Then Ethan shut off decorative stern lighting. Reflections disappeared. The dramatic luxury silhouette vanished. The polished floating glamour centerpiece darkened. Murmurs increased. Karen began visibly redirecting attention, still functioning. Then Ethan shut down dockside accent illumination. Half the marina visual composition collapsed, and the premium scenic corridor lost symmetry. Guest photos became uneven. Servers slowed. One photographer physically repositioned. Karen's posture changed. Now she understood something was wrong, but Ethan wasn't done. He shut down upper deck external outlets. Portable decorative lighting extensions died. Hanging event lights went dark. Warm ambiance disappeared. A visible section of exclusive waterfront luxury became shadow. Guests shifted uneasily. The polished illusion began cracking. Then came the hardest blow. He shut down non-essential onboard hospitality circuits. Climate support died, and refrigeration-linked event cooling systems failed. Temporary premium beverage chill units lost feed. Portable presentation equipment flickered. Audio support near yacht adjacent extensions glitched. One mounted event speaker died, and then another. Music cut unevenly, and silence spread in jagged pieces. 12 bro, hearing this just blew my mind. Karen had built an entire luxury identity around borrowed power, and the owner simply removed it. Across the marina, confusion rippled fast. Servers stopped. Guests whispered. Contractors checked cables. Electricians examined portable units. Karen started moving rapidly between workers. From camera angles, Ethan could see frustration in every sharp gesture. She pointed, checked equipment, demanded reassessment, redirected staff. But no contractor could restore power to systems they didn't control. Because HOA systems were fine, shared marina lights still worked, neighboring docks still glowed, community power remained active, only Ethan's yacht infrastructure had gone dark. That distinction made everything obvious. This wasn't toutage. This was ownership. Karen had built prestige around something private, and private control had answered. Then the final humiliation unfolded. Without upper lighting, without climate comfort, without functioning yacht-adjacent premium staging, without decorative symmetry, investors began leaving the exclusive zone. Groups drifted toward central HOA sections. Photographers stopped prioritizing waterfront glamour shots, and several premium guests exited entirely. The floating service bridge was quietly removed. So was retracted. Staff began collapsing temporary accessories. Karen's biggest social showcase was visibly unraveling, not through yelling, not through damage, not through confrontation, just lawful control. Ethan stood beside the marine cabinet in silence. Ocean wind moving lightly across the shoreline. He didn't feel rage. He felt clarity. But Chapter 3 wasn't the end, because Karen hadn't been humbled yet. She had only been embarrassed. And embarrassed people with authority often make dangerous mistakes. The next move she made would force Ethan into full retaliation. 13. The morning after the Harbor Networking Gala collapse, Seabriar Cove looked strangely normal. Sunlight reflected across calm marina water. Joggers moved through waterfront paths. Landscaping crews resumed trimming hedges like nothing major had happened. Luxury SUVs rolled past polished stone driveways. Dock gulls circled overhead. Boats rocked gently in their slips. But beneath that polished calm, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. Karen Holloway's luxury gala had not become the social triumph she expected. Instead, it became whispered POA gossip by sunrise. Guests had noticed, vendors had noticed, investors had noticed, residents definitely noticed. The exclusive waterfront yacht experience had turned into a dark, awkward, half-collapsed spectacle where decorative systems failed, premium staging broke apart, and the marina centerpiece suddenly became unusable. People were asking quiet questions. Why had the yacht gone dark? Why were premium guests redirected? Why had contractors removed access equipment? Why did Karen look furious all night? And most importantly, why had she built a luxury event around something she clearly didn't control? Bro, image-driven people can survive mistakes, but public embarrassment, that hits like a wrecking ball. Ethan Mercer expected frustration. He expected gossip. He expected Karen to be angry. What he didn't expect was retaliation. By mid-morning, his phone began receiving HOA notices. One email, and then another, and then another. 3 separate violation alerts. The timing was too perfect. The subjects were almost laughable. Unauthorized visual obstruction, yes, shoreline, retaining wall. Potential marina-facing aesthetic inconsistency. Unapproved dockside mechanical infrastructure visibility. Ethan stared at the notices in silence. Karen had shifted into paperwork warfare. Classic HOA behavior. When people lose power publicly, they often try regaining it through policy. 14. Ethan reviewed each violation carefully. The retaining wall, grandfathered before HOA formation, marine control cabinets, permitted and deed approved, dockside infrastructure, registered in original waterfront access documentation. Every complaint was weak, but weak complaints could still become expensive if used as a pressure. Karen wasn't trying to win legally, she was trying to exhaust him, and that told Ethan something critical. She was rattled. Still, he stayed disciplined. No angry emails, no threats, no dramatic neighborhood confrontations. Instead, he archived every notice and began building a timeline. Data misuse, unauthorized dock planning, visual trespass, attempted marine bypass, floating service bridge access, false prestige staging, immediate HOA retaliation. The pattern was becoming very clean. Then Karen escalated again. Around noon, a marina maintenance subcontractor Ethan trusted quietly contacted him. He had heard rumors that Karen was telling board members Ethan had intentionally disrupted a community investment event and interfered with HOA hospitality infrastructure, and that framing was dangerous. And she was trying to rewrite the story, and not as trespass, but as Ethan sabotaging a neighborhood function. That was manipulation, and if repeated enough, some residents would believe it. Bro, this is exactly how real-life power games work. First, someone crosses your line, then they act offended when you defend it. Ethan knew silence alone would no longer protect him. He needed precision, so he began gathering everything: camera footage, electrical logs, access attempts, service bridge deployment, contractor timestamps, vendor route patterns, HOA newsletters, gala graphics, property deeds, private dock registration, independent marine power permits. He built a full digital file. Years in marine contracting had taught him one lesson: documentation crushes noise. 15 that afternoon, Ethan noticed something else from his exterior cameras, and as Karen was near the marina again, but this time she wasn't smiling. She walked with 2 HOA board members and a contracted inspector carrying kitboards. They moved deliberately along the waterfront, stopping near his retaining wall and marine cabinet. Ethan zoomed camera feeds. They were inspecting his infrastructure without contacting him, without appointment, without authority over private marine controls. Karen pointed toward the electrical housing, then toward the yacht, and then toward shoreline supports. The inspector wrote notes. Board members nodded. This was no casual walk, so she was building a case, possibly trying to force compliance upgrades, or worse, restricted access reviews that could threaten marina operations, contractor movement, or property usability. Now, Ethan stepped in. He exited his home and walked toward the dock boundary calmly. No raised voice, no dramatic movement, just presence. The group noticed him immediately. Karen's posture visibly tightened. The inspector stopped near the property edge. The board members slowed. Ethan didn't need shouting. He simply positioned himself where private deed markers and dock boundaries were clearly visible. His body language said enough. This land is not yours. That subtle confrontation ended the inspection quickly. The group left, but Karen was not done. That evening, HOA communications escalated harder. Residents received a community standards advisory discussing the need for consistent marina aesthetics, safe electrical visibility, and review of legacy private shoreline exceptions. Legacy private shoreline exceptions. That phrase targeted Ethan directly. Karen was preparing policy pressure. She wanted his grandfathered protections weakened. That was a major mistake because Ethan finally stopped thinking defensively. He shifted offensive, not reckless revenge, strategic exposure. 16. First, he contacted his maritime attorney, and then a property rights consultant, and then a marine insurance representative, then the original county permitting office. Within hours, he confirmed what he already suspected. His private dock and marine electrical infrastructure were fully lawful, documented, protected, predating HOA authority. The HOA had zero direct operational control that gave Ethan leverage. Then he reviewed the most important evidence. The gala footage, frame by frame. Karen surveying his dock, decorators planning visual staging, workers testing private access, marina key attempts, the floating service bridge, unauthorized guest routing, temporary cable direction, false visual presentation, everything. It was devastating, not because it was dramatic, because it was clean. She had repeatedly used private property for HOA prestige without consent, and then retaliated afterward. That pattern could damage her board position badly. Still, Ethan waited, because timing remained everything. And then Karen made the mistake that changed the entire war. At sunset, another notification arrived. Formal HOA hearing notice, mandatory appearance requested, a review of possible unauthorized marine infrastructure concerns. Ethan actually laughed. After everything she had done, she was trying to put him on review. Bro, that level of confidence was unreal. Karen assumed bureaucracy could overpower evidence. She thought board authority would intimidate him. Instead, she had invited him into the exact environment where records mattered most. A hearing, 5 minutes, witnesses, documentation, formal accountability. That was her fatal move. The next 2 days became preparation. Ethan organized files into layers: property, log, electrical permits, and historical easements, insurance boundaries, private dock authority, video evidence, event misuse, retaliation pattern. He wasn't walking into an HOA argument. 17, he was walking into controlled exposure. Meanwhile, neighborhood gossip intensified. Residents were still discussing the failed gala. Some quietly blamed vendors. Some blamed power issues. Some blamed poor planning. Some blamed Karen's obsession with image. The pressure around her was building. And image-focused leaders crack hardest when public trust slips. And then hearing day arrived. The HOA clubhouse stood polished and intimidating, built with oversized windows overlooking marina water like some miniature political arena. Residents gathered quietly. Board members arranged papers. Karen sat at the front. Controlled, rigid, prepared. or so she thought, Ethan entered carrying a slim black case, not bulky, not dramatic, just organized. That alone shifted attention because calm people with evidence are dangerous. He took his seat. Board introductions began, compliance language started, procedural formality filled the room. Karen looked confident and still believing this was her review, still believing she controlled the room. She had no idea Ethan's documentation was about to reverse the entire narrative. And once that first screen lit up, Seabriar Cove would finally see exactly what she had done. The HOA clubhouse had always been designed to project quiet authority. High ceilings, polished stone flooring, framed marina photographs lining the walls, oversized glass windows overlooking the waterfront like the board wanted every resident reminded of who supposedly maintained community excellence. And on most days, it felt like another expensive neighborhood meeting space. That morning, it felt like a courtroom. 18 residents filled side seating rows faster than normal. Word had spread through Seabriar Cove that Ethan Mercer had been formally called into a compliance hearing after Karen Holloway's failed luxury gala. Some people came out of curiosity. Others came because Owood drama was practically neighborhood entertainment. A few showed up because they quietly suspected something bigger had happened at the marina. Karen sat near the center board table, posture straight and expression carefully controlled. She had traded public frustration for administrative confidence. In her mind, this was probably the recovery moment. If she framed Ethan as disruptive, difficult, or non-compliant, she could reclaim authority. But authority built on assumptions breaks fast when facts enter the room. Ethan Mercer remained calm. He placed his slim black case on the hearing table and quietly reviewed one final folder. No dramatic gestures, no visible anger, no attempt to dominate attention. That calm made people notice him more. Bro, people expect loud revenge, but silent evidence, that's where real pressure starts. The HOA chair opened procedural review, standard compliance language followed, property references were read aloud, Karen formally introduced the concern. Visual marina inconsistency, private electrical infrastructure review, and possible interference with HOA event continuity. That last phrase mattered. She was still trying to imply Ethan had disrupted a community event. The board invited Ethan to respond. He stood, and everything changed. Instead of arguing emotionally, Ethan began with property law. He presented recorded shoreline easements predating HOA authority, then dock registration permits, then county-approved marine electrical filings, then infrastructure visibility compliance. Every supposed violation Karen had filed collapsed one by one. The retaining wall protected marine cabinet, lawful, private dock systems, and registered 19 shoreline infrastructure, legacy rights fully documented. Board members immediately shifted posture. Karen's confidence tightened. Her first precious strategy had failed, but Ethan wasn't finished. He moved to the next layer, timeline evidence. A screen mounted near the hearing wall activated. Frame 1, Karen standing near Ethan's private dock with decorators. Frame 2, workers measuring event spacing. Frame 3, service crews unloading premium accessories. Frame 4, unauthorized marina key attempts at his private gate. Murmurs spread instantly, and residents leaned forward. The board members looked harder. Karen's shoulders stiffened. Frame 5, the floating surface bridge being positioned near his yacht. That image hit hardest because it was undeniable, not rumor, not interpretation, visible event staging around private property. Ethan calmly explained each timestamp. No exaggeration, no accusations, just sequence, pre-event planning. Access assumptions, visual use, property adjacent staging, unauthorized operational encroachment. Then he displayed the HOA promotional material. Exclusive waterfront luxury reception with premium yacht ambiance. Again, no didactic naming, but visual alignment clearly matched his dock and vessel orientation. Board members began quietly comparing angles. Karen's control was cracking. Bro, this was incredible. She built an image empire around borrowed ownership, then sat in a room forced to watch receipts. And then Ethan delivered the critical distinction. The gala power interruption, he explained it clearly. He had not damaged HOA systems. He had not disabled marina utilities. He had not interfered with community infrastructure. He had lawfully shut off non-essential private power, feeding his own yacht and independently controlled dock systems. And then he displayed electrical logs, time-stamped relay shutdowns, independent marine feeds only, no shared grid interference. 20 HOA service interruption, no external sabotage, only private system control. That point completely flipped Karen's narrative. The failed gala wasn't sabotage. It was the consequence of building prestige around systems she didn't own. The hearing room changed. Whispers spread faster. Several residents visibly recognized the implication. Karen had hosted a luxury event using private property optics, then filed violations after losing access. That pattern looked ugly. Then Ethan calmly presented the retaliation timeline. So, gala collapse, immediate HOA notices, aesthetic complaints, mechanical visibility concerns, shoreline advisory, targeting legacy exceptions, infrastructure review attempts, formal hearing notice, and the sequencing was devastating. It suggested pressure, not policy, and even board members could see it. The HOA chair paused proceedings briefly. That alone told Ethan everything. Karen no longer controlled momentum. When the hearing resumed, board members began asking questions, not to Ethan, to Karen. Why had decorators been near private dock lines? Why were event contractors measuring non-HOA boundaries? Why was a floating bridge positioned near a private yacht? Why had luxury yacht ambiance been advertised without owner approval? Why were compliance notices issued immediately after gala failure? Karen's administrative confidence began unraveling. She tried to reframe things as community visual enhancement, event overflow coordination, and misunderstood marina presentation logistics. But evidence had already done its work. And the room no longer saw smooth authority, it saw overreach. Once people stop hearing confidence and start hearing excuses, the fall begins fast. Then the biggest fracture happened. 21, a marina subcontractor, one Ethan had quietly informed earlier, submitted written confirmation that informal vendor conversations had referenced premium yacht access expectations connected to Karen's event planning assumptions. Not direct access promises, but enough to show she had implied control. That hurt badly, because board reputation depends on trust. If Karen casually implied authority over private waterfront property, that exposed the HOA to liability. Insurance risk, trespass claims, vendor confusion, operational overreach. The board knew it. The HOA attorney reviewing procedural notes visibly intervened. He recommended immediate separation between HOA operations and private dock property assumptions pending internal review. That was formal language, but everyone understood what it meant. Karen had become a legal problem. The hearing no longer focused on Ethan. It shifted toward governance exposure. Then came the cleanest revenge moment of all. Ethan did not ask for punishment. He did not demand fines. He did not threaten lawsuits. He simply requested written confirmation of three things: recognition of his private shoreline rights, acknowledgement that his marine systems were independent and outside HOA control, formal protection against future unauthorized staging or access assumptions involving his dock and yacht. As malicious compliance, perfection, no chaos. Just boundaries enforced through procedure. The board approved temporary recognition immediately, pending formal written issuance. Residents noticed, and Karen definitely noticed, the woman who had tried to turn his yacht into a luxury centerpiece had now watched an HOA hearing strengthen his protections. Power reversal at its cleanest, and then final fallout arrived. The board announced internal review of event authorization procedures and marina boundary conduct. 22. Karen was quietly removed from direct oversight of future waterfront event planning until review completion. Not public humiliation, but everyone understood that was a demotion. Her biggest social weapon, image-based control, had been weakened. Residents left the clubhouse buzzing. Some discussed liability, some discussed the failed gala, some discussed how calmly Ethan dismantled the narrative. Most just repeated one thing: Karen had pushed too far. As Ethan exited the clubhouse, sunlight reflected across Seabriar Cove's marina. The same polished water, the same quiet yachts, the same expensive calm. But now the neighborhood understood something it had ignored for years. Boundaries mattered, especially when the wrong person mistook ownership for convenience. Back at his waterfront estate, Ethan stood near the retaining wall overlooking the sovereign tide. The yacht sat untouched, polished, and silent. Still always his bat. The war was over. Karen had lost control, but fallout was still spreading. Because embarrassment inside an HOA doesn't disappear overnight. And what happened next would reshape the community long after the hearing ended. In the weeks following the HOA hearing, Seabriar Cove slowly returned to its polished coastal routine. But underneath the calm marina views and luxury landscaping, something had changed permanently. Karen Holloway's influence had not vanished overnight, but it had clearly weakened. Residents who once treated her like the unquestioned voice of waterfront authority had started seeing her differently. The failed harbor networking gala had already damaged her image, but the hearing exposed something deeper: how easily prestige had turned into overreach. Ethan Mercer noticed the shift almost immediately. 24, he resumed marine consulting, maintained the sovereign tide, took quiet offshore trips at sunrise, worked on contract reviews from the upper deck that Karen once tried turning into a social trophy. Peace returned, not because the conflict disappeared, but because boundaries had finally been respected. One evening, nearly a month later, the marina hosted another HOA waterfront gathering. Smaller, simpler, far more controlled. This time, every decorative light, guest path, and event marker stayed far away from Ethan's private dock. His yacht remained untouched, glowing quietly under its own power. No borrowed prestige, no forced access, and no assumptions, just ownership. As Ethan stood near his retaining wall, watching soft reflections move across the water, he understood something simple. People who ignore boundaries often believe confidence makes them powerful. But real power is knowing exactly what belongs to you and calmly refusing to let anyone treat it like public property. And in Seabriar Cove, nobody ever looked at the sovereign tide the same way again. Months later, Seabriar Cove had fully moved on, but Ethan Mercer's story stayed part of quiet marina legend. Karen Holloway never regained the same influence, and HOA boards became far more careful around private waterfront rights. Ethan never needed shouting, threats, or chaos. He simply protected what was his and let patience, documentation, and timing do the work. Bro, that's what made this wild. Karen thought luxury meant access, but ownership answered louder than ego ever could. In real life, boundaries only matter when someone finally enforces them. If this HOA revenge story shocked you, like, comment, and subscribe for more insane property drama, Karen chaos, and pro-revenge stories every day.